The evening air was crisp as I stood outside the restaurant, my palms pressed lightly against the cold metal of the door handle. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, shimmering like 1,000 tiny secrets, and I couldn't help but think of the one secret that had been eating away at me for months. Amna had invited me to dinner tonight, her tone unusually sweet, almost too rehearsed, like she was trying to cover something. That alone had set a cold ripple of unease through me. I had learned to read her in subtle ways, those fleeting glances at her phone, the hurried text messages she deleted too quickly, the late-night work calls that smelled of lies. Tonight, however, there was something different. Her invitation felt like a challenge, a carefully placed trap in the guise of reconciliation. I had debated for hours whether to go, my mind racing with suspicion and a burning curiosity I could no longer suppress. Yet, as much as fear tugged at me, a quiet fire of determination had settled in my chest. I would confront this. I would uncover the truth. Pushing open the door, the soft hum of conversation and clinking glasses washed over me. The restaurant was warm, intimate, the kind of place that promised romance but could just as easily witness betrayal. I scanned the tables, the flickering candlelight casting shadows across unfamiliar faces, and felt a surge of anticipation. Amna was already there, seated near the corner, her posture elegant but taut, like a performer waiting for the audience's cue. She smiled when she saw me, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. There was again that small, almost imperceptible twitch of anxiety that betrayed her confidence. I walked toward her slowly, savoring the tension that filled the air. Every step I took seemed to stretch time itself. The closer I got, the more I noticed the subtle signs of her nervousness. The way her fingers fiddled with the napkin, the slight tremor in her voice as she greeted me. She didn't know, not yet, that tonight would change everything. I had my own surprise, carefully planned, designed not out of cruelty, but from a need for clarity, for justice. Amna's eyes met mine, her smile faltering just a fraction. I could see the uncertainty flicker there, the first shadow of panic. She had invited me to dinner thinking she had the upper hand, believing her secret carefully tucked away. Yet I was about to tip the scales, to turn the quiet elegance of this evening into a stage for truth. And as I approached the table, heart steady and mind razor-sharp, I knew one thing for certain. By the time the night ended, nothing would ever be the same. The delicate illusion she had woven would shatter, and she would realize too late that some secrets refused to stay buried. The restaurant seemed to hush as I slid into the seat across from Amna, though the hum of conversation continued around us. She attempted casual chatter, smiling and laughing lightly at my small jokes, but it was hollow. I could see her hands trembling ever so slightly as she reached for her wine glass, and my pulse quickened, not with fear, but with the intoxicating certainty that I held the upper hand tonight. "Amna," I said softly, keeping my voice calm, almost casual. "It's been a while since we had a dinner together like this." She nodded, her smile tight, her eyes darting around the restaurant as if seeking a means of escape. "Yes, it has," she said, her voice slightly higher than usual. "I thought maybe we could just enjoy the evening." I nodded, letting the words hang in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. The evening progressed with her trying to maintain normalcy, asking about work, friends, nothing too intimate. But I noticed every slip, every micro-expression that betrayed her inner turmoil. The way she kept glancing toward the entrance, her fingers playing nervously with the edge of the menu, the way her voice faltered ever so slightly when she laughed. It all painted a portrait of someone desperately clinging to control. Just as she began to relax into conversation, the restaurant doors opened again. I stepped out for a brief moment, leaving Amna puzzled and slightly tense. Moments later, I returned, this time not alone. Beside me was a woman whose poise and quiet confidence seemed to command the space around her. She smiled gently, extending a hand toward Amna. "Amna," I said evenly, "this is Clara, an old friend of mine. I thought it would be appropriate for her to join us tonight." Amna froze instantly. Her eyes widened, and the air around her seemed to thicken. The smile she had worn so carefully all evening dissolved, leaving a stark emptiness that stretched across her face. She could barely speak, her throat working as if to form words that refused to come. Clara stepped forward with deliberate calm, her voice soft but precise. "Hello, Amna," she said. "It's nice to meet you." Amna's hands trembled as she adjusted her napkin, her carefully constructed composure cracking like thin ice under pressure. The recognition hit her suddenly, the realization dawning that the woman sitting beside me was not just a stranger, but the person whose life had been deeply affected by Amna's deception. I took a slow sip of my water, my gaze fixed on Amna, watching her falter. She opened her mouth, closed it again, searching for words that could possibly explain the unexplainable. Clara's presence was like a mirror held up to Amna's sins, reflecting everything she had tried to hide. The waiter approached, offering to take orders, but the conversation at our table was already more charged than anything happening in the restaurant. I could see the subtle tension radiating off Amna in waves. The sharp inhale as she realized her world was about to tilt, the rigid posture, the shallow breaths. I don't understand," Amna finally stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Why is she here?" Clara smiled faintly, not cruelly, but with the quiet authority of someone who had been wronged and had come prepared. "I'm here because you've caused enough pain, Amna," she said calmly. It's time the truth was recognized. Amna's hands dropped to the table, shaking. "Alex, you don't. This isn't fair." I leaned back slightly, my voice even almost clinical in its calmness. "Fairness isn't the issue here, Amna. Honesty is. And tonight, we're simply acknowledging what has been happening behind closed doors." Her eyes darted between Clara and me, desperation and panic flashing across her face. Every polite mask she had worn tonight had vanished, leaving only the rawness of guilt and fear. The world she had meticulously curated for herself, the lies, the half-truths, the stolen moments, was crumbling in front of her. I could feel the temperature around the table drop, as if the very air had shifted to mirror the tension. The restaurant, once warm and inviting, now felt cold and accusatory. Patrons glanced in our direction, sensing something unspoken but palpable. Amna's lips quivered, her breathing shallow, and I knew she realized that her evening of charm and control had failed. Clara's presence was a catalyst, but I could feel the weight of the truth pressing down on Amna without needing to say much. Every silence between us was loaded, each pause a dagger to the fragile confidence she had tried so hard to maintain. And in that moment, I knew the confrontation we had been avoiding for months was about to reach its peak. The calm before the storm had settled, and I was ready. Tonight, the illusions would shatter. Tonight, the truth would speak louder than any apology or denial. Amna had been caught, and there was no turning back. Amna's trembling hands hovered above the table, as if she could physically stop the truth from reaching her. The warmth of the restaurant had vanished, replaced by a suffocating chill that pressed down on the three of us. Clara's calm gaze met Amna's, steady and unyielding, and in that single look, Amna realized she was cornered. There would be no escape this time. "Alex, please," Amna began, her voice quivering. Why is she here? This is unnecessary." I leaned forward slightly, my expression neutral, but my words sharp enough to pierce through the remnants of her composure. "It's necessary, Amna. Necessary for you to understand the consequences of your choices." Clara's voice joined mine, smooth yet edged with quiet authority. "Amna, I've endured months of heartbreak because of your decisions. I try to believe in honesty and accountability, but it seems you thought deceit will remain hidden forever." Amna's eyes darted between us, panic surging. I never thought." Her voice faltered, breaking into a desperate whisper. She realized that no excuse could erase the betrayal. No manipulation could rewrite the reality now displayed before her. "You never thought," I said slowly, letting each word land like a controlled strike, "that your lives would catch up to you. You never thought the lives you've affected would intersect at the same moment, forcing accountability. And yet, here we are." Clara's hand rested lightly on the table, unwavering, as she added, "I loved him, Amna, and you stole that trust. You thought it would be secret, but some truths have a way of finding their path." Amna gasped, a short, sharp intake of air, the color draining from her face. Her voice wavered, small and broken. I didn't know. I didn't think anyone would find out. Her words sounded hollow even to herself. She had spent weeks weaving lies, convincing herself that her affairs would remain concealed. But now, the very web she had spun was collapsing, and the realization hit with the weight of inevitability. Every second stretched, the silence becoming almost unbearable. I could see the flickers of regret, shame, and fear dancing across her expression. I straightened slightly, my voice calm but final. Tonight, Amna, you have no more room to hide behind excuses. You've been confronted with the reality of your choices, the very people your betrayal has hurt. There is nothing left but acknowledgement, and I hope, though it may be too late, that you truly understand the gravity of what you've done. Tears welled in Amna's eyes, and she pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, trying to stifle sobs that threatened to spill out. Clara's presence, quiet but commanding, amplified the emotional intensity. Amna could see in Clara's eyes the sorrow, the indignation, and the sense of vindication that she had been powerless to avoid. Amna stammered, words failing her, leaving her voice trembling like a fragile thread. The mask she had worn for so long was gone, revealing a woman stripped of pride, facing the wreckage of her actions. You don't get to justify this, Clara said softly, almost pityingly. There's no excuse for what you've done. And tonight you see the truth that cannot be undone. The waiter passed by, oblivious of the tension, but to Amna, it felt like the world had narrowed to the small rectangle of the table. Every sound, the clink of silverware, the muted conversations, echoed like a reminder of her isolation, her exposure. She was surrounded not by enemies, but by the undeniable consequences of her choices. Finally, Amna's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of her. She had no words left, no defense strong enough to mask the shame, the fear, and the shock. Her eyes met mine for the first time tonight with a mixture of pleading and resignation. And in that moment, the truth crystallized. Her life had been altered irrevocably, her carefully hidden betrayals fully revealed. The night had become a mirror reflecting everything she had tried to conceal, and now she could see the stark reality in its unflinching clarity. The air remained heavy, the silence thick, but there was a subtle shift. No one spoke, no one needed to. The confrontation had reached its emotional peak. Amna's face, pale and trembling, said more than words ever could. She was defeated not by force, but by truth, and in the quiet aftermath, the weight of her actions settled upon her like a cold, unyielding shadow. The tension at the table lingered like a thick fog, refusing to lift. Amna sat frozen, her face pale, hands still trembling as though holding on to the remnants of a life she had thought untouchable. Every nerve in her body seemed alert, waiting for an escape that would never come. The once lively restaurant now felt oppressive. Every laugh and clink of silverware around us a cruel reminder of the normality she had shattered with her choices. I didn't know it would. Amna's voice cracked, faltering under the weight of reality. She tried to rise, to retreat into some excuse, some plea for forgiveness, but no words could mend the raw exposure she now faced. Clara remained seated calmly, her posture impeccable, her gaze unwavering. You knew, Amna, deep down, you knew the consequences, yet you ignored them. And now this is what the truth looks like. Amna's breath hitched. She pressed her fingers to her lips, as if to stop herself from speaking further, as if any sound might betray more than she could control. Her eyes darted between Clara and me, desperate for an ally, a reprieve, a lifeline. But there was none. She had isolated herself in her deceit, and now the walls she had built had crumbled. I leaned back, maintaining a calm exterior, letting the silence stretch, heavy with unspoken judgment. Amna, I said finally, my tone measured, I wanted to give you a chance to explain yourself. But tonight isn't about justification. It's about recognition. Recognition of the damage you've caused, the lives you've affected, and the truth that cannot be undone. She shook her head weakly, her lips trembling as she whispered, Please? I didn't mean... Clara's voice cut through, gentle but firm. Intentions don't erase outcomes. Words don't repair broken trust. Tonight, you've seen the consequences, and now it's on you to confront them honestly, without deflection, without excuses. Amna lowered her gaze to the table, tears spilling freely now. Her pride, the last vestige of control she had clung to, had dissolved completely. She was left raw and vulnerable, exposed to the full weight of her actions. She couldn't manipulate charm or plead her way out of this. Her defenses had failed. Around us, life in the restaurant continued, indifferent to the personal storm that had erupted at our table. The contrast was stark. Patrons laughed, waiters moved efficiently between tables, and music played softly from hidden speakers. Amna's world, once her carefully curated bubble of lies, was gone, leaving her alone with the echo of betrayal. I reached for my glass and took a slow sip, deliberately calm. "I don't need to see remorse," I said softly. "It's enough that you understand. That realization is yours to bear, Amna." She swallowed hard, nodding, the motion almost imperceptible. Her lips quivered as she whispered, I understand." Clara stood gracefully, gathering her things. "I hope you remember this night," she said quietly, not with anger or hatred, but as a mirror of the choices you made. "And perhaps, if nothing else, you'll learn to face the truth before it catches up to you again." Amna's gaze followed her departure, the room feeling emptier with every step Clara took. She was left with the silence of consequence, the solitude of realization, and the bitter taste of regret. I reached across the table, lightly placing my hand on Amna's folded hands, not to comfort, but to anchor the moment in clarity. "This is what happens when deception governs life," I said, my tone calm, steady, "and now you have to live with it." Amna nodded slowly, tears streaming freely, understanding at last the irrevocable nature of her betrayal. There were no words left, no excuses to be made. The confrontation had ended, but the weight of truth will remain with her long after the evening's shadows receded. The restaurant had returned to its usual rhythm, laughter and conversation filling the air as if nothing had happened. But at our table, time felt suspended. Amna sat motionless, her shoulders slumped, the mask of confidence and charm she had worn for so long completely shattered. For the first time in months, maybe years, she faced herself without illusions. I looked at her calmly, noting the fragility in her eyes, the mixture of shame, guilt, and a quiet understanding that some actions have consequences that cannot be erased. The power she had tried to wield through deception had slipped away, leaving only the stark reality of truth. "I think that's enough for tonight," I said softly, rising from my seat. My voice carried neither malice nor triumph, only quiet authority. "You've seen the consequences of your choices. Now, it's up to you to live with them." Amna nodded, tears still tracing the contours of her face. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came. Nothing could undo what had been revealed tonight, and she understood that. Her silence spoke louder than any apology ever could. Clara had already gone, leaving behind a presence that lingered like a mirror, reflecting everything Amna had tried to hide. The confrontation had ended, but its lessons remained embedded in the room, an invisible weight pressing on every movement, every thought. I reached for my coat and paused for a moment, looking back at Amna one last time. "Remember this," I said quietly. "Deceit may feel easy, but the truth has a way of catching up with everyone eventually." Amna's eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of regret and resignation. There was no pleading, no excuse, just the raw acceptance of reality. The woman who had smiled so confidently at the beginning of the evening was gone. In her place was someone forced to reckon with the choices that had brought her to this point. I stepped out into the cool night air, the city lights reflecting the calm after the storm. Amna remained seated, alone with her thoughts, the weight of truth pressing heavily on her shoulders. The restaurant, once a stage for elegance and charm, had become the theater of revelation, and the lesson was clear. Some secrets refuse to stay buried, and some betrayals demand their reckoning. As I walked away, a quiet sense of closure settled over me. The confrontation was over. The truth had spoken, and the night had delivered the justice that words alone could not provide. For Amna, the consequences would linger, but for me, the path forward was clear, untainted by deception, grounded in honesty and tempered by the calm satisfaction of having faced the truth head on.